Before we dive into this mind-bending story about why you should never, and I mean never, underestimate humanity, I want to know something incredible about you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what planet, what star system, what corner of this vast universe are you listening from? Are you chilling on Earth, maybe sipping coffee while watching the sunrise? Are you on a space station orbiting Proxima Centauri? Or ... Are you something else entirely, listening from a world we haven't even discovered yet? And listen, if this story gets your blood pumping, if it makes you proud to be human, or gives you a healthy respect for humanity, if you're not, smash that like button, because today's tale, it's going to show you exactly why the phrase outnumbered humans isn't a death sentence. It's a warning label. Picture this, my friends. Imagine an entire alien Armada 400 and 23 massive warships facing off against just 37 human vessels. The math seems simple, doesn't it? The aliens have overwhelming superiority. Victory should be inevitable. The humans should surrender immediately. Should. But here's what every species in the galaxy is slowly, painfully learning: when you're dealing with humans, math doesn't matter. Logic doesn't matter. Even physics doesn't always matter. What matters is this: humans are the only species in the known universe that evolved to fight impossible odds and win. Today's story will show you exactly how 37 human ships didn't just survive against overwhelming force, they dominated it. And by the end, you'll understand why every alien military academy now has a mandatory course titled "Why Human Numerical Disadvantage is Actually an Advantage." The Zorathi Empire had a simple, brutal, and today completely effective military philosophy: overwhelm everything. For over 3 centuries, this doctrine had never failed them. Not once. 10 ships for every one of the enemy. 100 soldiers for every 10 defenders. 1,000 missiles for every 100 targets. They didn't just win battles. They obliterated the very concept of resistance before it could even form in their enemies' minds. Admiral Kexther stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator, his 4 compound eyes scanning the tactical display, with the satisfaction of a predator that had cornered its prey. Each eye processed different spectrums of light, giving him a view of the battlefield that most species couldn't even comprehend. Out before him, displayed in perfect holographic detail, floated the human colony of New Terra, 2.3 million inhabitants. Decent orbital defenses, a respectable space dock, and pathetically ... 37 ships for protection. His armada? 423 vessels of destruction. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with barely contained amusement. The humans are requesting negotiations. The bridge fell silent except for the low humming of ship systems. Then Kexther's laugh filled the space, a sound like grinding metal mixed with breaking glass. Terrifying to most species, but music to Zorathi ears. Negotiations? Kexther repeated, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Tell them we accept only unconditional surrender. They have 1 standard galactic hour to comply, and why shouldn't he feel merciful? The Zorathi military machine was perfect. Absolutely, utterly, mathematically perfect. In the past decade alone, they had conquered 47 star systems. The Zelani Confederacy had fallen in 6 days. The Morthic resistance had lasted exactly 14 hours. The proud Vesturi Empire with their legendary unbreakable fleet formations had surrendered after losing 60% of their forces in the first engagement. Each victory had followed the same pattern. Zorathi forces would arrive with overwhelming numerical superiority. The enemy would assess the situation, realize the mathematical impossibility of victory, and surrender to avoid pointless slaughter. It was ... civilized, logical, efficient. Sir, his communications officer interrupted his thoughts. The humans have responded to our ultimatum. Kexther's attention focused on the communication panel. And they ... The officer paused, his translator struggling with the concepts. They said, and I quote, "Thanks, but we'll pass. Also, you might want to reconsider your life choices." The bridge fell silent again. This time, it wasn't comfortable silence. It was the silence of minds trying to process information that didn't fit established patterns. They ... declined? Kexther asked slowly. Yes, sir. And sir? They've also sent us a data packet. It appears to be ... human military history. Something about a place called Thermopylae and another called the Alamo, and the officer's voice grew increasingly confused. Sir, there are thousands of these records. Kexther dismissed the data with a gesture. Human history was irrelevant. Mathematics was absolute. 423 ships versus 37 ships equaled inevitable Zorathi victory. Very well, he said, settling back into his command chair. Begin the attack formation. Standard overwhelming deployment. I want them surrounded completely, no escape vectors. We'll give them a demonstration of Zorathi military efficiency. He paused, then added with genuine puzzlement, and scan their fleet again. Are we missing something? Hidden ships? Cloaked allies? Dimensional weapons? Negative, sir, the sensor operator confirmed after a thorough sweep. 37 ships, standard human configuration. No reinforcements within 3 light hours. No unusual energy signatures. No hidden weapons. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the U.East Defiance, Admiral Sarah Chun read the Zorathi ultimatum with an expression that her crew had learned to recognize and respect. It wasn't fear. It wasn't despair. It wasn't even concern. It was the expression of someone who had just been handed exactly the kind of challenge that made life worth living. Ma'am, Communications Officer Lieutenant Torres called out. His voice steady despite the circumstances. The Zorathi are demanding our surrender. 423 ships against our 37. They've given us 2 hours. Chun stood from her command chair, not quickly, not urgently, but with the fluid motion of someone absolutely comfortable in their element. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No panic. No despair. No dramatic declarations. Just humans doing what humans had always done best, preparing for the impossible. 2 hours? Chun mused, studying the tactical display. How ... Generous. Of them. Mr. Torres, send them our response. Yes, ma'am. What should I tell them? Chun's smile started small, but it grew not with malice or aggression, but with the pure joy of someone who had just been handed their favorite type of problem. Tell them we said ... no. Lieutenant Torres paused. Just ... no, ma'am? Well? Chun considered. You could add thanks for the generous time limit, but we won't be needing it. Oh, and Torres? Yes, ma'am. Send them our standard educational package. The one with Thermopylae, the Alamo, Rorke's Drift, the Warsaw Ghetto, and the Battle of Saragossa. They seem like they could use some light reading. Torres couldn't suppress a grin. Should I include the disclaimer about how these are just the warm-up stories? Absolutely. We wouldn't want them to think we're bragging. Tactical Officer Commander Park looked up from her displays. Admiral, the Zorathi fleet is moving into attack formation. Standard encirclement pattern, overwhelming force doctrine. By the book, Chun nodded approvingly. Perfect. Nothing worse than an unpredictable enemy. How long until they're in position? 97 minutes, ma'am. Excellent. That gives us plenty of time to set up the demonstration. Chun turned to address her bridge crew, her voice carrying to every station. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been presented with a teaching opportunity. Now I know what you're all thinking, she continued. 423 ships. Against 37. Overwhelming odds. Impossible situation. Mathematical certainty of defeat. She paused, her smile becoming almost fond. And you know what? You're absolutely right. If this were any other species fighting any other species, those odds would be insurmountable. Another pause. But this isn't any other species fighting any other species. This is aliens. Fighting humans. And aliens, bless their hearts, keep making the same fundamental error. She turned to face the main view screen where the Zorthi fleet was visible as points of light against the star field. They assume that because they understand the math, they understand the outcome. They think that because they've conquered every other species using overwhelming force, they'll conquer us the same way. Commander Park looked up from her tactical station. And that's wrong, ma'am? Chun's laugh was warm, genuine, and absolutely terrifying in its confidence. Commander, let me ask you something. How many times in human history has numerical superiority guaranteed victory? Park considered for a moment. Well, never, actually. Some of our greatest victories were against overwhelming odds. Exactly. And why's that? Because Park's understanding began to dawn. Because we don't fight the way other species fight. Precisely. Chun turned back to her crew. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that taught them to avoid impossible fights. We evolved on a world that taught us to win them. While they were learning to calculate odds and fight with overwhelming force, we were learning to fight smarter. While they were developing tactics based on superior numbers, we were developing tactics based on superior thinking. She gestured to the tactical display showing the approaching Zorthi fleet. And while they were conquering civilized species who fought by civilized rules, we were busy being the most uncivilized species in the galaxy. The bridge fell silent for a moment as that truth settled in. So, Chun continued, let's show our Zorathi friends what happens when overwhelming force meets overwhelming human stubbornness. She settled back into her command chair. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. You all know the drill. They outnumber us more than 12 to 1. They think that makes them stronger. She paused, watching as the Zorthi fleet began their final approach. In perfect, predictable formation. They're wrong. Numbers made them lazy. Overwhelming force made them stupid. And their biggest mistake? Another pause, this one filled with anticipation. They forgot the first rule of fighting humans. We don't fight fair. The Zorthi fleet moved with mechanical precision, each ship taking its assigned position in a formation that had conquered 47 star systems. It was beautiful in its efficiency, a perfect sphere of destruction with the human fleet trapped helplessly in the center. Admiral Kexther watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had nowhere to run. No reinforcements were coming. No tactical brilliance could overcome such overwhelming numerical superiority. All ships report ready, Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Excellent. Signal the human fleet one final time. Offer them the chance to surrender with honor. The response came back in Admiral Chun's amused voice. Admiral Kexther, we appreciate the offer, but we're going to have to respectfully decline. Again. Kexther's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Admiral Chun, surely you can see the futility of your position. Our ships outnumber yours by more than 12 to 1. Oh, we can count, came the cheerful reply. Humans are actually quite good at mathematics when we put our minds to it. Then you understand that resistance is pointless. Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your military studies, did you ever learn about a human concept called hold my beer? Kexther's translator struggled with the phrase. I what? What does alcohol consumption have to do with military tactics? Oh, you're going to love this, Chun replied. Fire when ready, Admiral. We'll wait. Kexther stared at his communication panel in complete bewilderment. Had the humans actually just invited him to attack them? Sir? His tactical officer prompted. Yes. All ships, open fire. Target the human vessels. 423 ships unleashed their fury simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles filled space with deadly light. The firepower was enough to crack a small moon. When the light faded, the Zorathy sensors swept the area for debris. Sir, the sensor operator's voice was confused. I'm not detecting any wreckage. Obviously. The humans were vaporized completely. No debris field is normal for that level of firepower. No. Sir, I'm not detecting any hits. What? Our sensors show that every single shot missed, sir. But that's impossible. We were firing at point-blank range. Kexther leaned forward, studying his tactical display. The human ships were still there, exactly where they had been before the attack, completely unharmed. Run a full diagnostic on all weapon systems, he ordered. Already done, sir. All systems operating normally. But, sir, our targeting computers show direct hits. Multiple direct hits on every human vessel. Admiral Chun's voice came over the comm channel, still maddeningly cheerful. Excellent shooting, Admiral. Really, top-notch accuracy. There's just one tiny problem. You're shooting at the wrong dimension. The bridge of the Dominator erupted in confused alien voices, but Kexther silenced them with a gesture. Explain, he demanded. Oh, it's quite simple, really, Chun replied, her tone suggesting she was enjoying herself immensely. You see, most species discover space travel, then discover faster-than-light travel, then discover energy weapons, and they think they've mastered the universe. But humans, we're curious. We keep poking at reality to see what else is hiding in there. And it turns out, this is the fun part, space isn't just 3 dimensions, it's 11. Around the human fleet, space itself began to shimmer and bend. While you've been fighting in boring, predictable 3-dimensional space, we've been learning to fight in all of them. Suddenly, the human fleet disappeared, not cloaked, not destroyed, simply got gone. Sir, the sensor operator's voice cracked. The human ships, they're not registering on any sensors. Impossible. Nothing can simply. Kexther's words were cut off as the first Zorathy ship exploded. Then the second, then 5 more in rapid succession. Where are they firing from? Kexther roared. I don't know, sir. Our sensors show empty space, but something is definitely attacking us. Chun's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. We're not hiding, Admiral. We're fighting from the 4th dimension. Able to see and target your ships while remaining completely untouchable in return. More Zorathy ships erupted in flames as weapons fire seemed to come from empty space itself. You see, Chun continued conversationally as another squadron of Zorathy vessels was systematically destroyed. When your species evolves on a peaceful garden world, you think inside the box. When your species evolves on a death world, you learn to think outside physics itself. Kexther watched in mounting horror as his perfect formation disintegrated under attack from enemies he couldn't see, couldn't target, and couldn't even comprehend. Many ships have we lost? He demanded. 47 and counting, sir. No damage to human forces. You want to know the real secret, Admiral? Chun's voice carried a note of something that wasn't quite sympathy, but wasn't quite mockery either. The reason humans win fights like this? Another wave of Zorathy ships vanished in coordinated explosions. It's not the dimensional warfare. That's just a tool. Any species could learn dimensional warfare if they put their minds to it. Kexther. found himself leaning forward despite the chaos around him, desperate to understand. The real secret is that humans have been fighting impossible fights our entire evolutionary history. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that were trying to nurture them. We evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Your species learned tactics. We learned survival. Your species learned formations. We learned adaptation. Your species learned overwhelming force. We learned creativity. The human fleet suddenly appeared in normal space, but not where the Zorathi expected. They had materialized in perfect position to attack the Zorathi command ship formation from behind. And that, Admiral, Chun continued as her ships opened fire with devastating precision, is why you were doomed the moment you decided to fight us. You brought ships and weapons to fight humans. But ships and weapons can't defeat human will. In desperation, Kexther ordered his remaining ships to scatter and regroup. It was a textbook maneuver, perfect for dealing with conventional three-dimensional warfare. It was useless against an enemy that could attack from dimensions his species hadn't even discovered yet. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic. We've lost over 100 ships. The humans haven't taken a single casualty. How is this possible? Kexther demanded of the universe itself. Because, came a new voice over the comm, this one belonging to Commander Park aboard the human ship Indomitable. You made the same mistake every bully makes. You assumed that because you were bigger and had more weapons, you were stronger. Another perfectly coordinated human attack eliminated 15 more Zorathi vessels. But strength isn't about size, Admiral. Strength is about adaptability. And humans have been adapting to impossible situations since we learned to walk upright. The human ships vanished again, leaving empty space where devastating attacks had originated moments before. You want to understand why you're losing? Commander Park continued. Here's your first lesson in human military doctrine. We don't fight to win. We fight to learn. Kexther realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just defeating his fleet. They were experimenting on it. Every battle teaches us something new about our enemies. Every engagement shows us weaknesses we can exploit. Every impossible situation forces us to become more creative. More Zorathi ships exploded as attacks came from impossible angles. And what we've learned about you, Admiral, is that your entire military doctrine is based on one assumption, that your enemies will fight the same way you do. But humans don't fight the way you do. We don't fight the way anyone does. We fight the way survivors fight. And survivors, Admiral, will use any tool, any tactic, any advantage to stay alive. Admiral Chun's voice returned to the comm channels, warm and almost educational. You know what fascinates me about this engagement, Admiral? You keep asking, how is this possible, instead of asking, how do we adapt? The remaining Zorathi fleet, now down to fewer than 300 ships, continued to fire uselessly at empty space while human attacks materialized from nowhere. That's the difference between a conqueror species and a survivor species. When conquerors encounter something they don't understand, they reject it as impossible. When survivors encounter something they don't understand, they learn from it. Kexther found himself actually listening even as his fleet died around him. Your species has conquered 47 systems using the same tactics every time. Overwhelming force, superior numbers, conventional warfare. And it worked, because you were fighting other civilized species. But humans aren't civilized, Admiral. Oh, we pretend to be. We have art and music and poetry and philosophy. We build beautiful cities and write stunning literature and create technologies that would make your scientists weep with envy. But underneath all that civilization, we're still the same species that learned to hunt creatures 10 times our size with nothing but pointy sticks and stubbornness. We're still the same species that survived ice ages and supervolcanoes and asteroid impacts, not by being stronger, but by being more creative about killing things that threatened us. More Zorathy ships died. And you, Admiral, just threatened 2.3 million humans, their families, their children, their future. Kexther felt something he had never experienced in his entire military career. Genuine, bone-deep fear. So let me ask you something, Admiral. Knowing what you know now about human creativity when it comes to protecting our own, do you really want to see what other surprises we've prepared for species that threaten human civilians? In the terrible silence that followed Chun's question, Kexther made a decision that would save what remained of his fleet. He asked the right question. Admiral Chun, he transmitted, his voice stripped of all arrogance. What are you? The attacking stopped. For the first time since the battle began, space around the Zorathy fleet was quiet. No explosions. No impossible attacks from nowhere. Just silence. When Chun spoke again, her voice carried a different quality, not threatening, not mocking, but educational. That's the first intelligent question you've asked, Admiral. And since you asked nicely, I'll give you an answer. The human fleet materialized in normal space, taking perfect defensive formation around the colony. We're humans, Admiral. And to understand why that matters, you need to understand where we come from. Suddenly, the main view screen of every Zorathy ship lit up with an image. A blue and green world spinning peacefully in space. Beautiful, isn't it? Peaceful, serene, the kind of world any reasonable species would want to call home. The image. Zoomed in, showing continents and oceans, clouds swirling in complex patterns. This is Earth, Admiral, human homeworld. And it's the most dangerous planet any species has ever evolved on. The peaceful image suddenly shifted, showing massive storms, erupting volcanoes, and sheets of ice covering entire continents. Your species evolved on a garden world, didn't it, Admiral? Pleasant climate, stable geology, predictable seasons. 2 types of weather, nice and slightly less nice. Kexther didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. Earth has ice. Ages, Admiral. Not gentle cooling periods, massive, planet-spanning glaciations that bury entire continents under miles of ice for tens of thousands of years. The images shifted to show supervolcanoes erupting, covering the sky in ash. Our planet has supervolcanoes. Single eruptions that can change global climate for decades. Volcanic winters that kill most life on the planet. Magnetic pole reversals that strip away our atmospheric protection and bombard the surface with lethal radiation. Asteroid impacts that wipe out entire ecosystems overnight. Gamma-ray bursts from distant stars that sterilize half the planet without warning. Kexther watched in growing horror as Earth's normal environmental conditions were displayed. But that's just the occasional disasters, Chun continued cheerfully. Want to hear about our normal weather? The images shifted to show massive spiral storms, hurricanes, cyclonic storms with winds over 300 kilometers per hour that can level cities and reshape entire coastlines. Lightning split the screen as tornadoes tore across landscapes. Tornadoes, rotating columns of air that appear without warning and can lift buildings off their foundations. We have seasons for these. Blizzards buried entire cities in snow. Blizzards that drop enough snow to bury a city in a single night. Hailstorms with ice projectiles large enough to kill. Floods that can move boulders. The images kept coming. Sandstorms, droughts, heat waves, avalanches. And that's just the weather, Admiral. Want to hear about the wildlife? The screen filled with images of Earth's most dangerous creatures. Our insects can kill grown adults. Single bites or stings that cause organ failure within minutes. Spiders. Scorpions and other venomous creatures filled the screen. Our plants are toxic. Beautiful flowers that secrete compounds lethal to touch. Trees that can cause permanent blindness from their sap. The images shifted to show sharks, crocodiles, and other aquatic predators. Our water is full of predators that haven't changed in millions of years because they were already perfect. Killing machines. Great white sharks, saltwater crocodiles, and blue-ringed octopi dominated the display. And the large predators, the screen showed lions, tigers, bears, and wolves. Creatures that can run faster than our ancestors could, with claws that can tear through flesh and jaws that can crush bone. Kexler stared at the display in disbelief. How did your species survive such a world? Chun's laugh was warm. Almost fond. That's the question, isn't it? Any reasonable species would have gone extinct on Earth within a few generations. The environment is too hostile, the predators too deadly, the disasters too frequent. But humans aren't reasonable, Admiral. We're stubborn. The images on the screen shifted to show early humans, small, seemingly helpless creatures in a world of giants and dangers. When our ancestors faced creatures 10 times their size, they didn't run. They made better weapons. Stone tools appeared on screen, then metal, then increasingly sophisticated weapons. When natural disasters threatened to wipe us out, we didn't hide in caves. We learned to predict them, to prepare for them, to survive them. Images of humans building shelters, storing food, creating early warning systems. When the environment tried to kill us with cold, we learned to make fire. When it tried to kill us with heat, we learned to find water. When it tried to kill us with starvation, we learned to hunt everything. The screen showed humans adapting to every environment. On Earth, from frozen tundra to burning deserts. But here's what makes humans unique, Admiral. Every other species adapts to fit their environment. Humans learn to change theirs. Images of agriculture, dam construction, and terraforming flashed across the display. We didn't just survive. Ice ages, we thrived during them. We didn't just endure disasters, we learned to prevent them. We didn't just hide from predators, we made ourselves the apex predator. And in the process, we developed something no other species has, Admiral. Something that makes us more dangerous than any weapon. Kexler found himself leaning forward. What? Imagination. The screen shifted to show human artwork, literature, and scientific achievements. When other species see a problem, they calculate the odds of solving it. When humans see a problem, we imagine what the solution might look. and then we make it real. Images flowed past. The first flight, space exploration, medical miracles, technological wonders. Other species ask, is this possible? Humans ask, how do we make this possible? The tactical display showed the current battle situation less. Been 200 Zarathi ships remaining, all human vessels intact. You came here with 400 ships because your calculators told you that was enough. We're defending with 37 ships because our imagination told us we could win. With 37 ships. And that, Admiral, is why every human child grows up hearing stories about heroes who faced impossible odds and won anyway. The screen filled with images from human history and mythology. David versus Goliath. A shepherd boy defeating a giant. Warrior with nothing but a stone and absolute confidence. 300 Spartans holding off an army of hundreds of thousands at Thermopylae. Impossible odds, certain death, legendary victory. The Alamo. 189 defenders against thousands. They lost the battle, but their sacrifice won the war. Rorke's Drift. 150 British soldiers defending against 4,000 Zulu warriors. They didn't just survive, they won. The war saw a ghetto uprising. A handful of civilians with improvised weapons holding off the entire German army for 27 days. Admiral, Chun's voice became gentle, almost reverent. We don't tell these stories because they're unusual. We tell them because they represent the human ideal. Every human knows that someday they might have to stand against impossible odds. Every human knows that when that day comes, surrender isn't an option. And every human is eager for that day to come, because that's when we get to prove what we really are. Kexther's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. What? What are you really? Chun's answer came immediately, with absolute certainty. We're the species that looked at a universe full of things that could kill us, and decided to domesticate it instead. The screen showed Earth as it was now: cities, farms, forests managed by human hands. We're the species that turned our deadliest enemies into our best friends. Images of humans with dogs, cats, horses, all descended from predators or prey. We're the species that faced extinction-level events and used them as learning experiences. Scientific data flowed past climate records, geological surveys, species survival studies, and most importantly, Admiral. We're the species that learned to find joy in impossible challenges. The display showed human celebrations after great achievements first. Moon landing, medical breakthroughs, technological innovations. Your species fights to win, Admiral. Humans fight to prove something. You fight because you have to. We fight because we choose to. And that, Admiral, is why you were doomed the moment you decided to fight us. You brought ships and weapons, and overwhelming numbers to fight humans. Chun's voice became almost sympathetic. But you can't defeat human will with ships. You can't overcome human imagination with weapons. And you certainly can't crush human stubbornness with numbers. As if to prove her point, the human fleet suddenly split into 7 separate formations, each moving in impossible directions through space. You see, Admiral, while you were perfecting the art of overwhelming force, we were perfecting the art of creative force. The human ships began attacking from multiple dimensions simultaneously, past, present, and future versions of the same vessels coordinating their strikes. That's why your numerical advantage means nothing. We're not just fighting you with 37 ships. We're fighting you with 37 ships across multiple timelines. Kexther watched in awe and terror as his remaining vessels faced attacks from enemies that existed in several different temporal states simultaneously. But temporal warfare is just the beginning, Admiral. Would you like to see what happens when humans get really creative? Before Kexther could answer, space around his fleet began to change. We've been experimenting with localized physics. Modification. Nothing dramatic, just making small adjustments to things like the strong nuclear force, electromagnetic constants, and gravitational fields. Several Zorathi ships suddenly found their own weapons firing backwards through time, shooting themselves before they pulled the trigger. As you can see, when humans really want to win a fight, we're willing to edit reality itself to make it happen. But then, unexpectedly, the impossible attacks stopped. But here's the thing, Admiral, Chun continued, her voice becoming warmer. More human. We don't fight to destroy. We fight to teach. The human fleet moved into a protective formation around the colony, making it clear they were defending, not attacking. Everything we've shown you today, the dimensional warfare, the temporal attacks, the physics modification, those were demonstrations. We could have ended this battle in the first 30 seconds if we'd wanted to. Kexther realized with growing understanding that the humans had been playing with his fleet. We let this engagement continue because we wanted you to understand something important. Humans don't win because we're the strongest or the fastest or the smartest species in the galaxy. Chun's voice became almost fond. We win because we're the most determined. When everyone else gives up, humans dig in deeper. When everyone else surrenders, humans find another way. The screen showed images of human parents protecting their children, communities coming together in crisis, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And when someone threatens our families, our children, our future, we become something that even we don't fully understand. So let me ask you something, Admiral. Now that you understand what humans really are, do you still want to fight? US? In the silence that followed Chun's question, Admiral Kexther found himself facing a choice that would define not just his own fate, but the future relationship between the Zorathi Empire and humanity. He looked at his tactical display. Less than 150 ships remained of his once mighty armada. The humans had 37 ships, all completely undamaged. But the numbers weren't what terrified him anymore. What terrified him was the restraint they had shown. "Admiral Chun," he said finally, his voice stripped of all arrogance and bluster, "We made a terrible mistake." "You did," Chen agreed, but her tone was gentle. "But mistakes can be learned from, Admiral. That's very human wisdom, but I think it applies to all species." "Tell me," Kexther said, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier confidence, "if you could have ended this battle immediately, why didn't you?" Chun's answer revealed something profound about human nature. "Because, Admiral, we've learned something over our long history of fighting impossible odds. The goal isn't to destroy your enemies. The goal is to make them your friends." The screen shifted to show images of former human enemies who had become allies, nations that had fought devastating wars but now worked together, species that had clashed but now cooperated. Every human knows that today's enemy could be tomorrow's greatest ally. We've seen it happen thousands of times in our own history. "You see, Admiral," Chun continued, "humans learned something important during our long evolution on Earth. The strongest survival strategy isn't being the best at fighting. It's being the best at turning fighters into friends." Images flowed past showing human communities working together, sharing resources, protecting each other. When our ancestors faced predators, they didn't just develop better weapons. They developed cooperation. When they faced disasters, they didn't just build better shelters, they built societies. The display showed human cultural exchange, intermarriage between former enemy groups, scientific collaboration. And when they faced other humans who might be threats, they learned to turn them into family. That's the real secret of human success, Admiral. Not our weapons, not our technology, not even our stubbornness, our adaptability. And the most adaptive thing any species can do is learn to cooperate instead of dominate. Kexther found himself actually thinking instead of simply reacting something that hadn't happened to him in a military context in decades. "Admiral Chun," he said slowly, "your species. You could have destroyed us. Completely. Without losses. Yes, but instead you us. Yes. Why?" Chun's answer was simple, direct, and completely human. "Because we'd rather have friends than corpses, Admiral. Friends are much more interesting." Kexther felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. For 3 centuries, the Zorathi had conquered through overwhelming force because they had never encountered a species that could resist it. But humans hadn't just resisted overwhelming force. They had made it irrelevant. "Admiral," he said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been hope. What happens now?" Chun's response was immediate and generous. "Now, Admiral, you have a choice. You can return to your empire with the knowledge that humans are enemies you can't defeat. Or you can return with the knowledge that humans are allies you don't want to fight." The tactical display shifted to show both fleets in peaceful formation. "We're not interested in conquering the Zorathi Empire, Admiral. We have absolutely no desire to rule over other species. But we are interested in learning from other species, in trading with them, in cooperating with them. Images appeared showing human scientific expeditions, trade missions, diplomatic exchanges with other species. The universe is a big place, Admiral, big enough for everyone. And humans have learned that the best way to explore it is together. For example, Chun continued, and now her voice carried genuine excitement, your dimensional sensors are fascinating. The way you process 11-dimensional data simultaneously is something our scientists would love to understand better. Kexther blinked all 4 eyes at once. You want to learn from us? Absolutely. Your species has conquered 47 systems, Admiral. You must have encountered incredible phenomena. Amazing species. Wonderful discoveries. And in return, we could share some of our creative approaches to physics. Maybe teach you some dimensional warfare techniques. Show you how we make reality more flexible. The offer was so unexpected, so completely. Contrary to everything Kexther understood about post-battle negotiations, that he found himself speechless. You would share your military secrets? Chun's laugh was warm and genuine. Admiral, everything we've shown you today will be in human military textbooks within a month. We don't keep secrets about how we fight. Why not? Because the more our enemies know about how we fight, the more creative we have to become. And creativity is humanity's greatest strength. Besides, she added with obvious amusement, half the techniques we use today were invented by human children playing strategy games. Our military academies recruit from gaming tournaments. But Chun wasn't finished. And think about the cultural exchange possibilities, Admiral. Your species has 3 centuries of conquest stories. Humans love stories. We'd trade you epic tales of impossible human victories for epic tales of Zorathi military brilliance. The screen showed human artists, musicians, writers, and storytellers. We could share music, art, literature, philosophy. Your species clearly values efficiency and precision. Humans value creativity and adaptation. Imagine what we could learn from each other. Kexther found himself imagining, for the first time in his military career, a universe where the Zorathi Empire cooperated instead of conquered. Your species has organizational skills that human corporations would pay fortunes to understand. Our species has innovation techniques that could revolutionize Zorathi manufacturing. Admiral, Chun said, and her voice became almost conspiratorial, what if instead of spending resources conquering species, the Zorathi Empire spent those same resources learning from them? The suggestion hit Kexther like a revelation. For 3 centuries, the Zorathi had spent enormous resources building invasion fleets, maintaining occupation forces, and suppressing rebellions. The cost of conquest was astronomical, but the cost of cooperation. The resources we've spent conquering 47 systems, he said slowly, could have built trade networks with 400 systems. Exactly. Chun's enthusiasm was infectious. And think about the knowledge you could have gained. 47 conquered species telling you only what you force them to tell you, versus 400 allied species eager to share their discoveries. The tactical display shifted to show not battle formations, but trade routes, communication networks, scientific collaborations. Every species in the galaxy has something unique to offer, Admiral. The Vesturi have incredible metallurgy. The Zelani understand quantum mechanics better than anyone. The Morthic have biological technologies that could revolutionize medicine. And humans? Well, humans specialize in making the impossible possible. Imagine what we could all accomplish together. Kexther felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a young officer: wonder. For decades, his universe had been simple: conquer or be conquered, dominate or be dominated. The strong rule, the weak serve. But humans had shown him a third option: cooperate, and both become stronger. Admiral Chun, he said, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been gratitude, my species. We may have been thinking about this all wrong. Not wrong, Admiral, just limited, and limitations can be overcome. That's very human thinking, but I suspect Zorathy can learn it too. The question is, what kind of universe do you want to help create? One where species fight each other for resources, or one where species share resources to accomplish things none of them could do alone. Kexther turned to address his surviving crews across the fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kexther. Stand down from combat status. We are reassessing our mission parameters. He paused, looking at the tactical display where human and Zorathy ships floated in space together, not as enemies, but as possibilities. Commander Zextel, contact the High Command. Tell them we need to discuss new strategies for interacting with human space. Sir? His tactical officer's voice carried confusion. What should I tell them about the battle? Kexther considered for a moment. Tell them we learned something important about the nature of strength. In the space of 6 hours everything changed. The Zorathy fleet, what remained of it, formed up not in retreat formation, but in diplomatic formation. Ships positioned for conversation, not combat. Admiral Chun found herself in the unusual position of hosting the first human-Zorathy diplomatic exchange in galactic history. Admiral Kexther, she said as their ships moved into parallel formation, I think this is the beginning of something interesting. Admiral Chun, came the reply, I think you may be right. My government is curious about your proposal for cooperative engagement. But the real change wasn't in the official communications. It was in the personal exchanges between crew members. Lieutenant Torres, monitoring communications, looked up with amazement. Admiral, you're not going to believe this. The Zorathy crews are asking our engineering teams about dimensional manipulation theory. And? Chun prompted. Our engineers are asking them about multispectrum sensor integration. Chun smiled. Ah, the scientists are talking to each other. Ma'am, Torres continued, their junior officers want to know if our gaming tournaments are really how we develop military tactics. And what did our junior officers tell them? They invited them to participate in next week's strategy competition. Chun's smile widened. Perfect. Nothing breaks down barriers like friendly competition. Within hours, something unprecedented was happening. Human and Zorathy scientists were comparing notes. Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead physicist aboard the Defiance, found herself in direct communication with Zorathy Senior Science Officer Velther. Dr. Kim. Velther's translated voice carried genuine excitement. Your species' approach to dimensional folding is completely contrary to established physics. I know. Kim replied with equal enthusiasm. Isn't it wonderful? We've found that established physics is really more like suggested physics. But that's impossible. The fundamental constants of the universe are absolute. Are they? Have you ever tried changing them? There was a long pause on the Zorathy end. You can change the fundamental constants? Locally, yes. Want to see? What followed was the first interspecies physics collaboration in galactic history, as human creativity met Zorathy precision to explore possibilities neither species had imagined alone. But the real breakthrough came when Communications Officer Torres received an unexpected transmission. Admiral, he reported, I'm getting a personal message from the Zorathy Communications Officer. He wants to know if humans really tell stories about fighting impossible odds. And what did you tell him? I sent him the audio version of the Battle of Thermopylae. Chun raised an eyebrow. And? He wants to know if we have more. Within an hour, Half the Zorathi fleet was listening to human historical accounts, mythology, and epic literature. The other half was sharing Zorathi conquest stories, efficiency philosophies, and organizational theories. "Admiral," Torres reported with barely contained laughter, "the Zorathi are fascinated by our underdog victory stories. They want to know why humans choose to fight impossible odds." "What did our cultural officer tell them?" She said, "Because somebody has to, and it might as well be us." "And their response?" "They asked if they could learn to think that way too." Admiral Kexther found himself in direct conversation with Admiral Chun, and the discussion was unlike any military briefing he'd ever experienced. "Admiral Chun," he said, "your dimensional warfare capabilities could revolutionize our defensive strategies. We've never considered multi-dimensional fleet positioning. And your sensor technology could eliminate most of our targeting difficulties," Chun replied. "We can attack from other dimensions, but we still have to aim from this one." "But more importantly," Kexther continued, "your philosophy of adaptive tactics. We've spent centuries perfecting overwhelming force. We never considered creative force." "Creative force?" "Using the enemy's expectations against them, making their strengths into weaknesses, adapting faster than they can counter-adapt." Chun smiled. "Now you're thinking like a human." "Is that good, Admiral? Thinking like a human while organizing like a Zorathi? That combination could accomplish things neither of our species has dreamed of." But the real revelation came when they started discussing the bigger picture. "Admiral," Kexther said slowly, "if humans and Zorathi can cooperate instead of fighting ... other species might follow our example," Chun finished. "Cooperation instead of conquest. Alliance instead of domination. The resources currently spent on warfare could be redirected to exploration, research, development, ... Merle. How much of the galaxy is still unexplored? How many species haven't we encountered yet? How many discoveries are waiting out there?" The tactical display shifted to show the known galaxy and the vast unexplored regions beyond. "Every species we've encountered has been focused on controlling known space," Chen continued. "But what if we focused on expanding into unknown space?" "Together, exactly. Within 12 hours, the first human-Zorathi cooperative agreements were being drafted. The immediate arrangements are straightforward," Chun explained to her senior staff. "Scientific exchanges, cultural ambassadors, communication protocols, and the long-term arrangements?" Commander Park asked. "Joint exploration missions, shared research facilities, integrated defense networks for mutual protection." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his communications panel. "Admiral, I'm getting requests from 6 other species. They want to know what happened here." "What kind of requests?" 3 want to know if humans accept surrenders. 2 want to know if humans are accepting new allies. And 1 wants to know if we're hiring," Chun laughed. "Tell them we're always accepting new friends, Torres. And yes, we're definitely hiring." But perhaps the most remarkable change was in Admiral Kexther himself. "Admiral Chun," he said during one of their private communications, "I want to apologize for something." "What's that, Admiral?" "When I first encountered human space, I saw obstacles to be overcome, resources to be acquired, territory to be conquered. And now? Now I see possibilities, partners, friends." Chun's voice was warm when she replied, "Admiral, that might be the most human thing anyone has ever said to me." "Is that a compliment? From a human?" "It's the highest compliment possible. When the time came for the Zorathi fleet to return to their space, it wasn't a retreat. It was a beginning." "Admiral Chun," Kexther transmitted as his ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, "this has been educational." "The best kind of education, Admiral." The kind where everyone learns something new. I will be recommending to the High Command that we immediately begin formal diplomatic negotiations with human space. And I'll be recommending the same to our government, Admiral ... When we meet again, I hope it will be as allies. Admiral, Chen replied with absolute certainty, when we meet again, it will be as friends. As the Zorathi fleet jumped to hyperspace, they left behind more than just a battle. They left behind an entire philosophy of galactic relations. The first joint human Zorathi research station was a marvel of combined engineering. Human creativity had designed impossible dimensional interfaces. Zorathi precision had made them perfectly functional. Together, they had created something neither species could have achieved alone. Admiral Chun stood in the station's observation deck, watching as human and Zorathi engineers worked side by side, solving problems that had puzzled both species for generations. Admiral, came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Admiral Kexther approaching, no longer in battle armor but in the practical uniform of a research coordinator. Admiral Kexther, she smiled. How are the dimensional studies progressing? Remarkably well. Your Dr. Kim and our science leader Velther have made 3 breakthrough discoveries this week alone. And the cultural exchange program? Kexther's expression, as much as Chun had learned to read Zorathi expressions, showed genuine amusement. Our junior officers are obsessed with human strategy games. They've formed mixed teams for your tournaments. Any good? They won last week's competition. Decisively, Chun laughed. Excellent. Nothing builds friendship like friendly competition. But their cooperation had effects far beyond their 2 species. Admiral, Kexther continued, we've received formal requests for alliance negotiations from 11 additional species. 11? The news of our cooperation has spread throughout this sector. Species that have been fighting each other for centuries are asking if they can join our, what are you calling it? The Cooperative Alliance for Mutual Exploration and Defense, Chen replied. CMED. Camed, Kexther repeated. I like it. Simple, direct, human. And what does the Zorathi High Command think of these requests? They single quotes intrigued. The resources we would have spent conquering those 11 species can now be spent exploring the Andromeda approach vectors. Chun raised an eyebrow. Andromeda? Joint Human Zorathi Long-Range Exploration. Your dimensional technology for travel, our organizational systems for coordination. We could have survey teams in Andromeda within 5 years. You know what I find most remarkable about this whole situation? Chun mused, looking out at the research station. What's that? 6 months ago, you came to conquer us with overwhelming force. Now you're teaching our children Zorathi mathematics and learning human improvisation techniques. Kexther's mandibles clicked in what Chun had learned was Zorathi amusement. And 6 months ago, you could have destroyed my entire fleet without losses. Instead, you taught us why cooperation is more powerful than conquest. That's very human of you to say, Admiral. I'm learning, Kexther replied. Your species has a remarkable ability to see potential where others see only problems. Chun smiled. And your species has a remarkable ability to turn potential into reality with incredible efficiency. Together, we're accomplishing things that neither of us thought possible. As they watched, a new ship approached the station, sleek, elegant, bearing the joint insignia of the Cooperative Alliance. Admiral, the station's communications officer announced, incoming vessel Harmony. Mixed crew, humans, Zorathi, Vesturi, and Zalani. Chen and Kexther exchanged glances. The Zalani joined? Chun asked. Yesterday, Kexther confirmed. They heard about our joint research into quantum engineering and wanted to contribute their expertise. How many species does that make now? 17 full members, 32 associate members, and 47 observer species. Chun shook her head in amazement. A year ago, most of these species were fighting each other. And now they're building together, exploring together, learning together. Admiral Chun, Kexter said quietly, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When you first saw my fleet approaching, 400 ships against 30-7... What did you really think? Chun considered the question carefully. Honestly, I thought, this is going to be fun. Fun? Admiral, impossible odds don't scare humans. They excite us. The more impossible the situation, the more creative we become. But you also thought you could win. I knew we could win. Not because we were stronger, but because we were different. We think differently, fight differently, approach problems differently. She paused, watching the mixed crews working together on the station. But you know what, Admiral? Winning that battle was the least important thing that happened that day. What was the most important? Meeting you. Learning from you. Discovering that the universe is full of potential friends instead of inevitable enemies. Kexter moved to stand beside Chun at the observation window. Admiral, he said, what do you think the galaxy will look like in 10 years? Chun smiled, her eyes fixed on the stars. I think it will be bigger. Bigger? We'll have explored more of it, understood more of it, connected more species across more distances. And I think it will be smaller. Smaller? Communication will be faster. Travel will be easier. The distance between species will shrink as we learn to work together. She turned to look at him. What do you think it will look like? Kexter was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, it will be more than we can imagine. Humans taught us that the impossible is just a starting point. Zorathy can teach other species that efficiency makes dreams into reality. And together, Admiral... I think we'll discover that the universe is even more amazing than we thought. As they watched, a group of young beings, human children, Zorathy juveniles, and several other species moved through the station's corridors, working on some kind of joint project. You know, Chun observed, those children will grow up thinking cooperation between species is normal. Is that good, Admiral? It's everything. They'll be the first generation to see the galaxy as one community instead of separate territories. They'll explore together, discover together, solve problems together that we can't even imagine yet. Kexter watched the young beings with something approaching wonder. My species spent 3 centuries conquering. Theirs will spend their lives building. Our species spent millennia fighting impossible odds alone. Theirs will face impossible odds together. As the two admirals stood together, watching the future take shape before their eyes, Chun received a communication from Earth. Admiral Chun, the message began, this is Admiral Harrison from Earth Command. We've received formal requests for alliance negotiations from 63 species across 4 galactic sectors. Chun and Kexter exchanged glances. 63? Chun murmured. The message continued. The President has asked me to inform you that the Fenji Cooperative Alliance is being recognized as the primary diplomatic framework for interspecies relations. Congratulations, Admiral. You've changed the galaxy. But as the message ended, Chun shook her head. I didn't change anything, Admiral, she said to Kexter. We did. Humans and Zorathy and all the species that chose cooperation over conquest. And the children who will inherit what we've built. Exactly. As they watched the stars, both admirals knew they were looking at a galaxy that was fundamentally different from the one they had known. A galaxy where impossible odds weren't obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to grow. A galaxy where Different species weren't enemies to defeat, but friends to discover. A galaxy where the question wasn't, how do we win? But how do we build something better together? And in that galaxy, humans had found their true purpose, not to be the strongest species or the smartest species or the most advanced species, but to be the species that reminded everyone else that impossible just meant no one had tried hard enough yet. And that, my incredible listeners, is why humans don't just survive impossible odds, we thrive in them. But here's the most amazing part of this story. It's not fiction. Right now, in our real universe, humans are doing exactly what Admiral Chun did. We're choosing cooperation over conquest. We're building instead of destroying. We're exploring instead of dominating. So drop a comment and tell me, what impossible thing do you think humanity should tackle next? Mars colonization? Interstellar? Travel? Dimensional physics? Or maybe something we haven't even thought of yet? And if this story made you proud to be human or gave you a healthy respect for humanity, if you're listening from elsewhere, smash that like button. Share this with every being in your solar system. Because the next time someone tells you that humans can't do something because the odds are against us, you can remind them that impossible odds aren't our weakness. They're our specialty. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the galaxy, where humans prove that numbers don't matter, determination does. I'll see you in the next adventure, where we'll discover why aliens stopped trying to understand human logic and started copying it instead. Until then, remember, when the universe says impossible, humanity says, hold my beer.